And this is what Dr. King was talking about. We have to reimagine the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about race, because it's so jacked up in this country at times that the very people who need welfare are voting against it because they think it's for black people. And this ain't new. That's what I said you have to have a sense of history. In the 80s, they used to have TV shows like Sally Jesse Raphael and Donna. She didn't even open before she got right. And they'd have shows like The Welfare Queen. And they tried out this black woman. They wouldn't say she was black. They'd just say, up next, Taquanda. From the Taylor homes in Chicago. They'd say stuff that didn't even make sense. She has three kids, 5 baby daddies. How you do that? And they would tell this story about Taquanda that would make her seem lazy, that would make her seem hypersexual, that would make her seem dangerous, that would make her seem as if she were stealing from the country, so that you would hate Taquanda and mark welfare as a Taquanda thing, as a black female thing, so that Wendy or Becky in North Carolina or Mississippi or Alabama, who's on welfare too, is voting against her own interests, thinking she's voting against Taquanda. Y'all big on that down here. No disrespect, but y'all, south of Mason-Dixon, that happens a lot. Dr. King's legacy is not just not to be colorblind, it's to be conscious of the ways in which we are different, but not allow them to hurt us. Dr. King's vision is not to be post-racial. Don't let people tell you we're going to be post-racial. I don't want to be post-racial. I want you to know I'm black. I don't want to be post-racial, I want to be post-racist. That's the vision of Dr. King, but that means we have to ask different questions. How many of y'all went to public school? Me too. How many of y'all have metal detectors in your school? Security cameras, police, searches. See, you have to ask a different question. Because you can go in any city around this country and you see a line down the street to get into public school. It'll take you 20 minutes to get into school because you're getting searched by somebody, a dog sniffing between your legs, somebody searching your locker, somebody searching your book bag. There's a police officer, a school officer, parole officer, probation officer. There's a security camera. We spent more money on security equipment in schools than prisons in the last 5 years. And they search you, they prod you, they poke you. It takes you 20 minutes to get into school. And when you finally get in after 20 minutes, ain't nobody stopping you from leaving. And you gotta ask yourself, what does that mean? What does it mean for them to invest millions of dollars on making it hard to get in, and ain't one person stopping me from turning right back around and going back home? And yet when kids leave after being abused and searched and prodded, ain't no books, the teachers are leaving, there's violence, there's all this stuff. When you leave, they call you a dropout. The challenge of this legacy is to ask a different question. What would it mean if instead of calling them dropouts, we call them pushouts? When you drive up and down a North Carolina highway or a New Jersey highway, you are exponentially more likely to be pulled over because you're black and male and young. But a New Jersey study shows the people most likely to have guns and drugs, white men. They'd actually have a better statistical chance if they pull all white people over. I'm not saying they should do that. They should not do that. However, the phenomenon they call driving while black, imagine if they called it patrolling while racist. A different conversation. When Dr. King died, there were 250,000 people incarcerated. 250,000 people were incarcerated when Dr. King died. And we thought it was a travesty. How could a nation lock up 250,000 of its own citizens? You know how many people are locked up right now? 2.5 million. 1 in 100 American citizens is incarcerated. 1 in 100 American adults. And just to give you some perspective on that, I'm going to leave y'all alone in a minute. France and Germany together have fewer prisoners than we do. Canada and Germany and Ireland have fewer prisoners than we do. Scotland, Sweden, though in Mexico, fewer prisoners, than we do. We got more prisoners than any 2 or 3 countries combined. And it's not just first world. Go to the axis of evil. Go to North Korea. Go to Cuba. Go to Venezuela. Go to China. Go to Pakistan. Go to Afghanistan. Add them all up, and we have more. 1 in 3 black men between 20 and 29 is on parole, probation, or incarcerated. A new study shows in their lifetime, 1 in 3 black men will spend time under criminal supervision. Women are quickly catching up. Latinos, 1 in 4. Mass incarceration over the last 30 years. The simple answer is we just raised a generation of criminals. The simple answer is we just raised a generation of slow runners. People just don't get away from the cops like they used to. But the legacy of Dr. King says we must ask the question of the relationship between poverty, incarceration, militarism, drugs. All this stuff is connected. We didn't just raise a generation of criminals, we raised a generation that is committed to criminalizing everyday poor people. We closed the mental institutions in 1980. And then when you can't go to the mental institution, where do you end up? On the street. And then we criminalize being on the street. You follow what I'm saying? You're in a mental institution. They close the institution, now you're on the street. And then we create laws against loitering, panhandling, begging, public drunkenness, etc. So now you go from here to here, and it's illegal to be here. You were getting medical treatment in the mental institution, now you're on the street and you're self-medicating through alcohol and drugs. And right at that moment when you're on the street and need drugs, what hits the street? Crack. And then we do what? We start a war on drugs. Which has made, by the way, over the last 30 years, drugs cheaper, easier, getting stronger than ever. We ain't win. But the people on crack are now incarcerated. And then you go to jail, no medical treatment, no drug treatment, and then you come out in many states, you can't vote, you can't get an educational loan, you can't get public housing, and Negroes can't get a job without a criminal record. And you're still on drugs with a mental illness. What's my point? My point is that there are a web of issues that we must resolve as a nation, and it's too easy to pick on poor people. It's too easy to pick on the vulnerable. Your job is to ask different questions so that we can get different answers. And the last thing I'll tell you is, we must act bravely. The legacy of Dr. King is to act bravely.